Hey, what's going on? It's Doug Cunnington here, and I'm talking to Mo Moolah. And yes, that is the real name. I thought it was a fake name at first, but after we started chatting, I realized, hey, it's just a guy's name, and I read too much into it. But this is an awesome story. He purchased a website in September of 2019 for somewhere in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, and then sold it in September of 2020 for $24,000. And the crazy thing is, right after he purchased the site, there was an algorithm update and the traffic dropped by 30 to 40% in the first 30 days. But he persevered, and we're going to hear the story today. Mo, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good, yeah. Thanks for asking.
And yeah, it's no joke. When I first got the email from you, I was like, is this a real name? I mean, I thought it could be a fun marketing thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, after we chatted for a minute, I was like, oh, I feel bad for assuming that. But you know, the internet's a crazy place. So
it
it
is.
was. And for the people that don't know you, like myself, we literally have only talked for a few minutes. Can you just give a quick intro, your day job and, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Before this, my kind of day job was in email marketing. I was in the online industry, but in the kind of email marketing industry for a little while. I built lists, sold affiliate products, yeah, in like a variety of niches. So like tons of different niches, a lot of different campaigns, and that done really well for about 3 or 4 years. But things started to change in the email marketing industry, and I decided to just kind of diversify some income, which is the reason why I kind of came into kind of niche site building. So,
Okay.
so yeah.
And did you work for yourself with the email marketing, or were you part of a bigger organization?
Yeah, good question. I was all self-employed. So I literally went online, figured out, kind of typed in how to make money online type stuff. And yeah, you get just an avalanche of information. Just sifted through everything. And for me, email marketing kind of it stuck out because the returns are pretty good. And obviously, if you know how to write an email and you've got like a tailor-made audience, then eventually, if you write the correct emails to them, they're going to pull out credit card and buy something. So it aligned with what I was willing to do at the time, and it worked. It worked really well.
And what shifted with email
Yeah,
marketing? I'm a big fan of it myself, but yeah, what made you want to look for other options?
essentially, if you do email marketing the correct way, you probably will keep an account open for indefinitely, right? But unfortunately, sometimes you can, I guess, send the wrong emails out, and you have the wrong subscribers opt in, and that just means that you've run the risk of getting an account closed down. And for me, it happened just too many times. Sometimes these kind of companies will just do checks, random checks, and they'll just ask you general questions and stuff, and usually you pass them. But sometimes they'll just blanket ban your account, and I think it happened once or twice in some of my biggest accounts, and I thought this is ridiculous. Like I've lost my entire business almost overnight. So I said I've got to diversify because this isn't gonna sustain like a family. So yeah.
And it's funny you mention it that way because for a lot of affiliate marketers or other, just people that work online, and I really encourage people to build an email list because that is an asset that is sort of
Yeah.
agnostic. But I have had those experiences where basically the email marketing company like an Aweber or Active Campaign or fill in the blank. There's 20 or 30 of them out there, or even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could just shut down your account, not refund your money, and they basically don't have to tell you anything. So
Yeah. No reasons.
heartbreaking when when that happens. So okay,
Okay.
that's a whole other area. But you realized I need to diversify, and you got into affiliate marketing. So I take it you were probably aware that people were building affiliate sites and getting SEO traffic versus your email list building route. So, how did
Yeah.
you navigate into purchasing the site?
Definitely. So I understood that. Well, I understood that you could build blogs. Obviously, that's kind of like a given. But I didn't really understand the monetization models of having a website. It's very different to email marketing. That's kind of just one additional monetization method. So I kind of figured out, okay, this website thing it's been around for a little while. I understand why it's important, but I wanted to find out how much money you can make. Essentially, that was really important because I was trying to diversify income and I wanted to know, okay, with this asset, how much can I make? So that's kind of where I navigated through to, and that's when I kind of found these Facebook groups. And within those Facebook groups, I figured out, okay, you can sell for 30x, 25x, whatever or more. It's an asset, and obviously it's based on monthly income. So that was really attractive to me. Having an asset that continued to build month to month, and then it had the possibility to sell for 30x at the end of, I don't know, year one or year two. It was very attractive. So research, and it kind of took me to a Facebook group, and that's where I bought, I guess, the first asset at the time.
What kind of information were you looking for from the seller before making the purchase?
Yeah, good question. So in hindsight, I probably didn't ask enough questions, right? I was pretty new to buying websites. I tried to do as much due diligence as possible, but I mean, unless you do this full time or you have a team that understands how to buy websites, you're gonna miss stuff, right? And a funny story is I missed a few things in the website. So for example, when I saw it, for me, what stuck out was it had an okay link profile. It'd been around for a little while. I think it had been purchased about three. The domain had been purchased about 3 years ago, so it had some track record there. But what kind of sealed it for me was it had about 60,000 or maybe 50,000 words of unpublished content, which I thought, okay, fantastic. Why hasn't he published it? Maybe I'm just going to pick up the website, publish the content, and it's just going to pour in the traffic, you know? But what I didn't realize was that the content was basically rubbish. It was just like very generic, not spun, but very badly, poorly written English. And I would have to go through everything and reformat it. And importantly, it had no SEO value, really. It had no keywords attached to it. So it was almost like a blank slate, almost. So those are the things I was looking for.
Okay. Yeah, and I know kind of I know what you're talking about. I purchased a
Yeah.
site back in the day just to kind of go through the process at a particular vendor and marketplace. And yeah,
Mhm.
the content was basically garbage. It was fine if you read it, but there was no real information and no keywords, so there was no traffic. What were the stats on the site? How much
Yeah.
traffic was it getting? How many
Yeah.
articles and some other details like that?
It was well. Let's go for finance first. Commissions. It was making about $200 actually when I first picked it up. Well, that was the average for the last, I guess, 6 months. Content. It had about 50 articles published, I reckon. Based on those two things, it was like, okay, seems like to be kind of a good asset. Good content, good monetization history. Like I mentioned, the links looked okay. Wasn't a link expert at the time, so I didn't really know what I was looking for, but it didn't look too spammy looking at the kind of link profile. So yeah, those are the kind of the two or three main things. Also, I checked out what keywords it was ranking for on, I guess, page two, because that was pretty important. And I just wanted to see if I could rank additional pages based on that information. So it had, like, I don't know, about 7 or 8 really good keywords on page two. So that was a kind of a plus sign for me to pick it up.
Do you remember how much traffic it was getting at the time?
Traffic. It was about 150 site visitors, page views a day, probably something like that, in and around that. Definitely under 200 and probably above 100. So it was doing okay.
Okay. So maybe like 5,000 visitors a month or so.
Yeah, something in that range. Yeah.
Okay. Pretty cool. And then you said the content looked okay, and I take it the keywords looked all right.
Mhm.
Did you look for anything else specific, like within the content as quality markers or the formatting or anything like that?
Yeah. So I was getting to grips with CRO. So I wanted to see. I don't really. Well, at the time, it made sense to buy something that had good CRO. But looking at it now in hindsight, it's probably better to buy something with bad conversion rate optimization, because you can change it and spike the conversions, right? So it had okay CRO, seemed to be working, because the best pages had good conversion rates based on kind of what Amazon was telling me. So that looks okay. In terms of the content quality, I did read through some of it, not all of it. There was a lot of content there, but the main pages, and they were well written. I believe the person who was selling it had, I guess, a friend that was writing it. Maybe they was in the industry at the time, so they had some experience. So they wrote it. It wasn't fantastic, but it was okay for me just to go back and just tweak some stuff.
And you mentioned the backlinks looked okay, nothing
Yeah.
too crazy or spammy. Do you remember how many there were? And do you know if they were like
Uh,
guest post or some other kind of link building strategy?
Yeah, good question. I don't remember specifically how many backlinks there were, but I do remember it had an okay mix. We'll get into this in a second, but there were some links that just didn't make any sense at all. It was like from a Russian site and had nothing to do with the industry. So I was like, okay, this is a bit questionable, but there weren't too many, but enough for me to kind of put my eye up and think, okay, these need to probably go. If I'm being honest, it didn't have as many links in the industry to industry. I mean, I might as well just say it was in the pet industry, so it didn't have many links from the pet industry like connecting towards it. So that was probably a way for something I could build on. The owner at the time had about 6 or 7 sites, so he did mention that this was one of his smaller ones, and it was just kind of twiddling away. It done well maybe a year ago, but as he spent more time on other sites, it lost focus. So there wasn't many new links pointing to the site because he hadn't done much outreach.
So mostly looked pretty good. You thought, hey, let's pull the trigger. You did some negotiation.
Yeah,
And did you use an escrow at all, or you just paid direct? Because it was a
yeah. Funny story. So with escrow, first time I ever used it, we set it all up. We negotiated price, and we went into escrow. And he kept asking me, have I verified escrow? Have I verified escrow? And I was like, yeah, it's been done. So he asked me a few times. I went back into it, and I just essentially clicked. At the time, I thought it was verified, but I think it was accept payment or something like that, and the payment just went straight to him before I actually got the website. And I was like, okay. I read through it. I was like, wait, did I just send him all the money? So I sent him a message. Luckily, he was just a good guy, honest guy, and he said, "Yeah, it's fine. You've sent the money by accident. We'll still go through with it." But yeah, that's a good tip. Be careful with escrow because you can make mistakes.
That's funny. I've never used an escrow service, and funny thing, I have sold a website just directly, and they just wired me the money because there was a lot of. I mean, people know who I am,
Yeah,
and I'm not
yeah,
going to go and screw somebody over. So they were like, "Yeah, sure. If like we'll just pay you the money." It wasn't even like 50% up front or any kind of thing. It was just like, here's this huge amount of money. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, so there's some good people out there. There's some
yeah.
good people.
Luckily.
Okay, so you get the site in your possession, you change over the affiliate links and do the normal migration activities, and then you got this algorithm update, the ever-present, just chance that you can lose your organic traffic, and then the whole equation just falls apart. So how did you
Yeah,
deal with this? Like, what
yeah.
happened, and how'd you deal with it?
It was tricky because what I didn't realize, and I mean, I'm assuming the kind of owner did realize it had been hit. Well, the algo had just kind of came out, and it was slowly decreasing. Based on my research, I couldn't tell how far it was going to go down. For me, it looked like it was going to stabilize. So I kind of took the risk of buying as is, but of course it went down, which means what it was valued at wasn't necessarily what I purchased it at, because once everything goes down, you lose almost, well, I lost like 40% of the traffic, which wouldn't be too bad if it was just information posts, but it was review posts as well. So that was like 50% of commissions just dropped because one page that was significantly had a lot of significant traffic, it just got wiped out totally. So I was like, okay, wow, this is not great at all. So it lost traffic, it lost that particular review post. What I know now that I didn't realize was you really got to check which pages are bringing in all the cash, all the commissions, because if they do fluctuate, which they kind of always will, but if they go down too heavily, the valuation that you're paying is never going to hold, and it's never going to withstand the test of time. So you need to know specifically how many pages are ranking and how many I guess you're going to rank to kind of keep it upwards. So yeah, that happened. It got hit. 40% was like a lot. I was like, wow, this thing. I mean, it didn't have much traffic, but now it's got a lot less. Just spent all this money, which, I mean, it's not a significant amount, but it's still a decent amount of cash. So I was like, okay, wow, what's going to happen now? So that was my dilemma when I first picked it up. It was within about 4 weeks, it just kind of all plummeted.
How did you share this story with like family or friends? Like,
I
hey,
didn't.
okay, so you're
Yeah,
just like, all right, hopefully we could fix this, and then I could
yeah,
just tell the story after it's all better, right?
yeah. Well, if I'm being honest, I wanted a refund from the seller. I didn't send it luckily, but I was like, you sold me this failing website that maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, but like everything's gone to shit. And I'm like, what am I going to do with it sort of thing? But in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened because it was starting kind of from rock bottom. I had to figure out how to do audits, technical audits. I had to think about how to disavow links, which at the time I had no idea. Like, what do you mean? Go into Google and submit request to de-index links. How does that even work? So yeah, I had to go through all those things, and then again, because the content wasn't ranking, I had to figure out, okay, why is the content not ranking? Let's go deep into it and do a content audit and find out what has gone down, why has it gone down, etc. So yeah, it was a blessing in disguise.
Okay, so let's dive into those areas. And first, let's talk about the on page. So you audited the on page,
Yeah.
and what did you look for? And then what did you do to fix it?
Yeah, so I stuck the website into Ahrefs, and they've got like a fantastic site audit tool. I mean, I think there's even a way for people to get it for free right now, but at the time you had to pay for it, right? Put it into to Ahrefs, and it gave me like maybe about 50 or 60 different items to check. The most important ones were pages that were kind of I think they're called 404 or 301. Some of them were redirected, and some of them were just hitting blank walls and getting. It was just like a broken page. So check those. Those are really important. Fix those. There were like lots of title tags and headers and meta tag descriptions missing or invalid or duplicated. So I just went through that list and just meticulously changed things and edited things and allowed the site to, it was just cleaner. Once I finished just the technical audit, it was a lot cleaner. And then after that, there was like a content audit that I did as well.
So with the content audit, what did you look for there?
Ahrefs again has a really good template, like a spreadsheet that you plug your website into, and it once you put the input in, it outputs all of the different web pages, and it allows you to see which ones are receiving a lot of traffic and which ones are not getting much at all. So I put my parameters in, and I found out that probably about 20% of the maybe a little more, maybe like 30% of the web pages, they wasn't really receiving much traffic, and they'd been around for like 6 months plus. So if they haven't got traffic and they've been around for a little while, it probably makes sense to either redirect them and consolidate them or just delete them completely. I tried not to delete too many, but there were some that was like maybe 300 words that kind of didn't need to be on the website as is. So they've got deleted, and I just consolidated tons of information. So again, it was in a pet niche. So for example, let's say like talking about cats, if there was different articles on cats, but they were going around the same thing and they were really short, and just put them all together. And then importantly, I would like optimize the keywords that when Google comes and researches for the content, it's something that's more structured, and there's a keyword in there, and there's title tags are correct and the H1's correct, etc. So that took a little while actually. It took a little while just to kind of go through and consolidate and redirect, and that one's broken, needs to be fixed, etc.
Do you remember how many articles you removed or consolidated? So you started with roughly
Yeah,
50, and then
yeah.
how many after this audit exercise?
Yeah, so the stick rate was probably about 20, about 30 actually. So 60% of articles stayed, but 40% of them either removed or was consolidated, and maybe like 10% were just deleted outright because they didn't really make any sense at the time. So it was definitely well needed, because once it was finished, the site was like really lean. It had all of the information, all of the title tags and everything was correct. And when I really indexed everything, you could just see it just felt a lot faster.
Okay, great. And then was there anything else with on-site that you did before we move on to your off-site and link audit?
I wasn't really familiar with on-site. I knew conceptually what it meant, so I've done some research with that, and I picked up a tool called Surfer, with Surfer SEO, which is a really really good tool, and played around with the metrics in that. I've done a few tests and left it for like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks, and saw what worked and what didn't, and it had a really profound effect on the positions that the top pages were in the SERPs. So essentially, what Surfer does is just kind of gives you like a competitive analysis of where your competitors are. So I just plugged in, for example, like word count. My words were maybe like 900, but everything on page one was like 1,500. I just added more words. Or if I had too much text that was bolded, or if I didn't have the correct link structure in place, or it had like maybe 6 or 7 different parameters that you just need to close the gap essentially. Add more. Specifically, they had phrases and word matches that you need to include. So, for example, like a cat page again, they would have like if the page had different keywords on. Sorry, if the page that your competitors had certain keywords or phrases, you would kind of need to have those as well, because Google's kind of telling you this is, if you want to be top three, you need to have this type of words and this many times, etc. So yeah, played with all those things, especially for the top 10 pages, and just got the on-site looking really, it looked robust. It was a lot more filled. Content was propped up a little bit, and as time started to move on and test, and I've done a few more tests, the on-page made a big difference actually, especially
Okay.
specifically with Surfer.
And I've heard from many people, if you go through both areas that you're talking about, where you eliminate the basically unneeded content that is not doing well,
Yeah.
and you go and you improve the existing content, you'll get like pretty quick returns on that, because
Yeah.
you don't have to wait for the turnaround time for links. So if you do link building, it could take a
Mhm.
little while before you see a big impact. So
Yeah.
moving on to the audit of the offsite and those links that you were disavowing. And for people that
Yeah.
don't know, you could just submit a file in the Google Search Console, and then Google won't consider those links anymore. And if you're experiencing negative SEO, if you have links that were maybe built and they're crappy, you should get rid of them. So how did you assess those links on the
Yeah,
site?
good question. Good question. So I had to essentially download all my links, which didn't take too long, but I had to make sure that I had all of the information. You can do that with Ahrefs as well, but I used Search Console because it made more sense if Google's telling me that these ones are incorrect, or potentially then go to the source and find out. So download that information. I just basically put a checklist. The checklist was as simple as if it's related to pets, it probably can stay as long as it's not super spammy, which it usually wasn't. If it's not related to pets, then what's the link between the page? Is it just someone that really likes cats and they want to link it from their blog personally? That's fine. But is it like a random Russian site, which actually there were a few, I had nothing to do with pets, and it was like gambling, and it was like a really low domain, like ranking, then there's no point me keeping it there because there's no link, nothing positive about that particular link, and there was like maybe 10%, 15% of links that just were very odd. It didn't really make much sense, so I just removed them all.
Okay. And then did you see any impact from that in the short term? Of course, you're doing several things at once, so we can't attribute any
Yeah,
one thing. But
yeah.
when you remove the links, did you see anything specific?
Well, what I wanted to see was that page that dropped heavily go up, but unfortunately it didn't. But what did happen is the pages that were dropping stopped dropping, and they just kind of steadied a little bit, and that was good enough for me because I had about two or three like top money pages, and they had definitely taken effect. But as I started to do a few of these different cleanups, specifically with the disavow as well, because like I said, I thought there was some pretty odd links in there. You could just see them just steadying themselves, and I was like, okay, month on month, this is good because I can build on that.
Okay. Very good. And any other details with either disavowing or like reviewing the old links that you bought the site with?
Yeah, one thing I would say is easy to just say, okay, yeah, that one doesn't make sense. Let's just delete that one. But I try to keep it extremely strict. And if it was like a really spammy looking link, go into them, check them if they've got nothing to do with your area. Plus, they look really really odd themselves. They've got like a really bad track record. If you type them back into Ahrefs and you notice they've got no traffic and stuff, then chances are, and they've also just been created recently, chances are they've got no use to you. But I try not to take too many out. I can't remember how many referring domains there were. Maybe there was like 80 or 90. I took away about 10 or 12. So it wasn't like a ton, but it was necessary.
Okay. And yeah, just to emphasize that, you can screw up majorly by
Yeah.
disavowing links that you think are bad but are actually helping your site. The good part is you can go and change your disavow file, but it's kind of an advanced thing. It's simple in concept, but it's an advanced thing that you should tread lightly on. Like you said, be more
Yeah.
conservative and then trim a little bit. And then you can always trim a little bit more. And that's a better approach than getting rid of everything. All right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
okay. And just to re-emphasize, right? So you're doing these advanced things. You've gone deep
Mm.
into the content side. You basically didn't know how to do any of this stuff ahead of time, right?
Yeah. Sorry. So if the site had gone like fantastically well and it didn't drop and plummet in the SERPs, I wouldn't even of researched these things. Once the site was started to do bad, I had to kind of research, okay, why is it doing this? And in the research, I realized, okay, maybe it's the links, or maybe it's the content, or maybe on-site isn't fantastic, or maybe you need to add more backlinks in general. So it was, like I said, it was kind of a blessing in disguise that I had done. What was good about it, in a sense, is it happened right at the beginning. So I was thrown into the deep end, and it was kind of sink or swim. It was like, okay, you can either just leave it and I guess just be upset and say this doesn't work, kick your feet and move on, or you can see it as a learning process, which made sense at the time because I was kind of all in. I didn't want to lose my money, and I knew this thing kind of worked. So I just pull my socks up, so to speak, and just done the research essentially, figured out what it was.
So speaking of backlinks,
Yeah.
you told me that you have been doing really well with like guest posting and other sort of link placement. So take us through
Yeah.
your approach, and actually before you even tell us the approach, what
Mhm.
results were you able to get in terms of the number of backlinks?
Yeah, so I went all in backlinks for about 3 to 4 months. Previous Before that, I didn't really spend much time in backlinks. Wasn't because I didn't think that they were worthwhile, just because I didn't have the time. And if I'm being honest, backlinks are kind of scary. You don't know what you're doing. It can be difficult to like figure out what's a good backlink, what's a bad one, how do you get them right. So I kind of left that on on my to-do list, and it got to a point where I'd finished everything on my to-do list, and the next thing was backlinks, and I was kind of like, "Oh, I don't want to do this." But anyway, so yeah, I figured out that it needed to be done, and I guess from that point onwards, I just done more research and tried to figure out, okay, what specifically, how for my time, what is going to be the best use of it? Is it going to be doing manual outreach? Is it going to be paying for someone to kind of come in and do it for me? Is it going to be doing the skyscraper shotgun approach? It was daunting because you read all this information. There's all these different kind of ways to do it. Everyone's got a stance on it. PBNs are bad. This is good, and it was difficult to ascertain what should I do to build links to this website. So yeah, tons of information, and I had to just kind of filter through and figure out what would work for the site.
Okay. And you arrived at doing some outreach and guest posting. So how'd you set that up?
Yeah, so initially I started out sending emails one website at a time, and very quickly realized that was like the bad approach to take. But I had no choice because I was just kind of testing stuff. So I would send an email to a company that I thought might be correct, hit their support page, and send an email. Results were obviously very bad because no one gets back to you. And after a few days, I realized it's not going to kind of work. So I thought, okay, how can I automate this process? The way to automate it essentially would be to use a tool, some type of outreach tool, and find a way to grab all this data from Google and stick it into the tool to give you the output of their email address. So initially, I didn't want to spend any money. I tried to keep costs really, really low. So I didn't use an outreach tool. I just grabbed all of the different domains and just kind of went to each one and would find like some type of support address or something like that. But again, quickly you realize it's by not kind of investing back into your business, it definitely makes a difference because you're basically shooting yourself in the foot, because if you don't have more email addresses and you're not sending out enough emails, you're not going to get enough links. So yeah, it was kind of that was the mindset I was taking. Bigger the data, the better the outreach process. Realistically, the easier you should be able to obtain links.
And I can't remember if you mentioned it, but you got about 75 links over that 12-week period. Is that about right?
Yeah, yeah, that's about right.
75. Okay, that's great. And for the, people that haven't hired a service, I mean, that is many thousands of dollars worth of links, even at the lowest sort of like domain ratings and that sort of thing. Do you happen to
Yeah,
remember the domain rating on average of those backlinks, or
yeah,
what kind of results were you seeing in terms of authority?
yeah. So initially, the site was about the pet site was probably about 12 or 13 DR, or like DA. So it was on the low side. And when I started the outreach process, most people or websites above like 30 didn't really get back to me, or they just say they're not interested. So it took a little while. The first few weeks were probably 20 DR and under. You get like a few people that might be interested. Maybe you've got like a good angle and they just enjoy the cat page, for example, and they've got a good website. So you like at 40 or 50. But yeah, what happened was it would start off really low with those that were interested in terms of the DR. And then as time passed, you'd get people like 50 and 60 DR that were interested. And before they wasn't interested at all, they wouldn't get back to you. So clearly, as the site started to increase, my I guess the weight in my outreach started to increase because people were saying yes. It's not yes, sorry. They were saying maybe instead of no. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't know specifically how well there was like 75-ish of those. I think the average was probably about 25 to 26. Yeah, which is not too bad considering the DR of the site was below that. So it was a good average.
And then you were able to get, from 13 or 14 for your site to over 31 in those 12
Yeah,
weeks. And I take
yeah.
it the traffic was increasing, over time. Because I mean, links take some time, but if you put in a good effort over the course of, 3 months, like usually you're going to see some results. So what was traffic doing around this time?
Yeah, so it had probably not quadrupled, tripled. So I picked it up. It was doing about 150, 200. It got up to like 600 by this point. And it was like a good diversity across money pages and info pages. So the whole site was kind of growing. It wasn't just like one page that was responsible for like 400 hits. So that was pretty cool. So it had gone up a really good amount. And the interesting part was I think every month it was increasing by like 15 to 20%, which was just showed a really good increase in traffic. And that was due to obviously some of the on-site stuff that I'd been doing, but also some of the off-site stuff as well. So the link building had taken effect, especially as I started to continue to do it. And the people that were linking back had bigger profiles.
Awesome. Were you adding content at the same time?
Yeah, so with content, I never really stopped adding content. When I first picked up the site, well, after all audits, within the first 2 months, I had a content plan, and the content plan was essentially as much content as possible. But no, it was like structured content. So it was like, okay, this month I'm like 30 articles, next month maybe 40, maybe the next one 15, and it was structured based on I had like content silos in place. So again, it was like a pet niche. So okay, let's do one content silo about this particular cat thing, next one about this particular cat thing, etc. So what I found is that this was really interesting. When Google had ranked the site initially, the pages that were ranking really well, those topic areas, they continued to rank really well. So what I did was just check what's doing really well, and then I would just structure content like a nice content silo around this particular like pet thing one, and then another content silo around something else that was doing really well. So for me, it was like Google was kind of showing me this is what we were kind of giving you authority for. So just carry on and push content around that. So I just carried on going down that kind of that avenue. So content was being pushed at the same time. So when the links were being built, the content was all coming increasing at the same time. So it was kind of just this kind of cacophony of links, content all coming together, which was driving the site upwards, and it had a really big effect.
And did revenue follow roughly the same? So it went up by 3x or so, or was it different?
Yeah. So revenue, like as I mentioned, because traffic dropped initially, it was doing like $200, but it dropped to like $50 for the first few months, $50, $60, $100 for the first few months. So that was to be understood. But as the site started to pick up, the revenue definitely it started to like it didn't double initially, but it was going up by I don't know like 25%, 50% based on very like it was based on commercial posts obviously because at the time the site was only really making money from Amazon affiliate products, right? So it was based on probably about 3 or 4 posts that had been doing really well, and they continue to do really well in the SERPs. As I continue to move on, I diversified some income as well, but I guess maybe we can talk about that in a bit.
Okay. Well, actually, go ahead. So
Yeah, cool.
where did you diversify?
Cool. So Amazon is very good. Obviously, everyone knows that, but they had cut commissions. I think they did it in like maybe May. I think I can't remember something like that.
April.
So April, there we are. End of April, they cut commissions, and the pet niche was in it. So I didn't lose 50%. I lost like 60% of what I was achieving before, which was just ridiculous. And the thing is, at that point, April was probably the highest revenue at the time. So it was like really spiking, 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 spiking. And when they cut it, it's just like, okay, this is ridiculous now because I'm losing more than half. So there was like a second affiliate partner that had been trying to, I guess she was trying to court me. She was trying to get me to transfer links over to her. As soon as the Amazon thing hit, I was like, okay, let's go. We had a call the next day, and I started to change over links just to test it out. And the test did okay. So I instead of just changing everything over to them, I just put different call to action buttons and added those call to action buttons in the top pages, and that allowed me to diversify income, which actually made a really big difference. Because with Amazon, I can't remember what the conversions were, but essentially with this one affiliate product, it pushed the sales up like quite a lot considering.
What were the terms with the affiliate program? What percentage and how long was the cookie period?
Yeah, the cookie was 30 days, which obviously is a big deal. The terms was I think they was paying on a CPA basis, so they was paying $20 per sell, which is actually pretty good. But even though sometimes people would spend like 200, $300, and you only get like credit $20, because it was a pet niche and people were buying like I don't know like cat collars for like $8, you'd still get paid $20 for the lead, which worked out really well when those pages were receiving traffic because people were picking those small items up and you were getting paid $20 per lead. And obviously with Amazon cutting commission rates, it just offset that failure, that loss, that slash, which kept the commissions pretty much even, and it started to slightly go up as well.
Anything else with revenue?
Yeah, so with Amazon slashing what it was slashing, I hadn't really anticipated adding ads to the ad revenue to the website. Just because I didn't think it was well. First of all, it didn't reach the minimum thresholds. My kind of plan was to get it onto Mediavine at 25K at the time. They had like a threshold of 25K, and that was kind of my plan. And before that, I decided to stick it onto Ezoic, which it did actually add. It added I can't remember how much percentage it was, but it added a good bottom line to the website. My concern was would it affect the affiliate commissions, and after testing it, it didn't really make a big difference at all, to be honest. So with Amazon affiliate was on there, the second pet affiliate was on there as well, and also with ad revenue, the revenue done okay. It was diversified, and that's all I kind of wanted, was that kind of diversified revenue.
And did you put those ads on all the content or just on informational? And did you ever look at any other like sponsored, like individual ads or anything with companies or anything different?
Initially, I only wanted to put them on info posts, but the majority of the traffic was going to commercial posts, so it didn't really make any sense to just have them on there. So I added those onto all the commercial posts because it brought the website up a little bit. It did, like I said, it didn't make a big difference. There were some sponsored posts that I accepted as well, like from some brands. And again, I think with those, they're definitely good to diversify, just because depending on where your affiliate revenue is, you can always add in a few $100 based on which partners you kind of build a relationship with. The two different affiliate programs, the advertisement revenue as well, and also just small things like I applied for the UK and Canadian Amazon affiliates, which meant that anyone that was picking up products from there, I would still get commissions. Again, it wasn't anything fantastic, but it was enough for it to add to the bottom line. Now, most of the site I was doing, the work of the site I was doing myself, it meant that I've kind of kept pretty much like 90% of the revenue, which helped.
That's awesome. And what was it making, I guess, towards the end, finally,
Yeah.
right before you were selling?
Yeah, so I think it averaged out about 950, about around nine, including I guess some sponsored posts and ads as well. It kind of stabilized after a nice, really big spike. It kind of like just stabilized at about 950.
Okay, and what multiple did you get? I
Yeah.
didn't do the math there, so yeah, what
Yeah,
multiple did you
I
get?
wanted a 30x, but unfortunately, I think I got like a 27. Yeah, so we negotiated around that. I think the buyer wanted. He made a fair point that if you put it on marketplace, obviously they're going to take their commission, which would knock off a little bit. So I thought, okay, that's fair enough. He was all cash as well, and he was ready to go there and then. So I took just slightly smaller multiple than I would have liked, but it made sense at the time.
Yeah, and I think I was chatting with someone earlier, and yeah, if you go with a broker, I mean, you're talking 15%.
Yeah,
So that's a decent chunk with
yeah,
most of the brokers out there. They do they do help out. They add some due diligence and some other little things that can help out. But depending on, your experience level and what you know how to do, then you can, get a little bit of a higher price and or just save some money. Everybody saves a little money.
yeah.
And did you sell just directly via like a Facebook group again?
No, so with the outreach that I've been doing, it wasn't going unnoticed. There was a few outreach managers that, and they were the managers for different pet websites, and one particular one, I think she had like about five or six of our clients' websites that she was just managing all the outreach for. And I remember we had like an email conversation, and I asked her, okay, yeah, I'm looking to do my outreach, here's the guest post information, etc. And I asked her at the end, I was like, do you have any other kind of clients, friends, or recommendations for me? And she said, yeah, here they are. And when I replied back saying I've kind of got all these links already, she was like, wow. She was kind of stunned but slightly impressed. And I think based off that, she said, okay, do you know what? I've just had a chat with my client, which is the person that kind of owned those websites, and he said he might be interested. So we had that's the way the site got sold. It was a private sale from an outreach manager who forwarded him on to her client.
Okay, that very interesting. So, and I was going this route. So I think one of the things you can find is if you're in a specific niche, your site maybe has more value. Like if you were just selling it to me, whether it was a pet niche or whatever, it's just
Yeah.
some random website. But if you had a site that was like internet marketing and you could show me, hey, it's getting this much traffic and
Yeah.
there's whatever few hundred articles on there, and
Yeah.
I could immediately migrate it over to my site and know that I'm going to get probably at least that much traffic, maybe more. So like
Hmm.
if it's like a real strategic value for a company, like you may be able to, you know, either charge more or it's worth more to them just in general. So pretty cool just through
Yeah.
that organic outreach that you were doing. Okay. That's awesome. And I forgot to ask this. How many articles did you add from September until you sold it?
There was about just over 200, maybe like 210. So
Okay.
yeah, let me like 160, something like that.
Okay.
That's how many.
Great.
There was 50 on the site that some got taken off. Yeah, like 150, 160, something like that.
Okay. So pretty good amount of content, did quite a bit of work, and you did you did an amazing amount in 1 year. So I take it you weren't planning on selling it in the short term when you first purchased the site, but when the opportunity popped up, you were like, "Yep, let's do this now."
Yeah, yeah, it made sense. Initially, for me, it was post Christmas, so like the end of this year, beginning of next. That kind of made sense because multiples will probably, well, multiples wouldn't go up, but the revenue would go up, so you could probably get a higher multiple. That was my plan. But once the offer came up, it just made sense. I feel like with this industry, if you have an asset, it's best to de-risk yourself sooner rather than later, depending on where you're trying to take things. And it made more sense to have the cash in bank and then go elsewhere and just essentially do the same thing, but on a bigger scale.
Okay, cool. And I just interviewed Adam Smith from Niche Website Builders, and he
Okay.
had like sort of a similar story. I think his first site was a little more expensive, but
Yeah.
he's gone the route of like purchase and then do an audit, clean things up on site,
hmm
off site, sell it, maybe keep it on board if he's interested in that topic area. So yeah. So what are you doing now? What did you do with your earnings there?
Some of it I had to use for just day to day because I spent a year with basically, well, it paid for some for like bills and stuff, but it's always good to take a little money out. Um, but what I'm essentially going to do is just take the bulk of it and put it into another project, something that needs a bit of like TLC, but on a bigger scale, and just keep building it and probably flip it in like 18 months.
Okay. Very good, man. That's cool. And you were telling me that you are rolling out a bit of a service. Can you tell us a little bit about it here?
Yeah, definitely. So off the success of the pet website, that's obviously it's done well. And at the same time, I started up a different site from scratch as well, and that's done really, really well over the past year. Just using exactly the same information that I've been telling you, just making sure everything's correct with links, everything's done correctly with content. On site is done as it's supposed to be, and off site is done correctly. So based on those two, and I think people have started coming to me and saying, "Look, Mo, can you run my site for me? Can you create?" And I was like, "Not really. I'm kind of doing my own stuff." But after a while, I think based on the amount of I guess people just coming to me, I realized this probably could be a service, and I could just offset some time and help people out essentially. So yeah, it's a management service, and it probably is. It's better for two types of people. Maybe beginners with kind of cash heavy, but they don't really know where to go and need a bit of assistance, or those that have got like a portfolio of sites and they've got like just too many for them to really spend enough time with. So if that kind of like if that's kind of viewed, then it would make sense to just get someone on board that's got the time, got the expertise, and can just make sure that your asset grows in the right direction, essentially.
Very cool. Yeah, and I know I'm asked to do that sort of thing pretty often, and I don't like working with clients. So, and I'm busy. I'm busy
Yeah,
enough, or I'm busy as I want to be. I'll put it that way. I'm not
yeah,
honestly. This is going off subject a little bit. I'm not really that busy, but I don't want to be busy because you talk to people, they're
yeah,
like, "Oh man, I'm so busy." It's like
yeah, 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 yeah.
you could work on whatever you want to. Not everyone, but anyway, I'm really not that busy, but
Yeah.
I just do the things that I want to do. So, anyway, this is a great service because I know for a fact those two avatars, those two types of people are out there. New
Yeah.
people with money, and they're like, hey, I want to invest in a different area, kind of like, how you got started, and they
Mhm.
just don't kind of know what to do. So, very
Yeah.
good. And I know it's fledgling, it's just getting started. So, we'll put the contact info for people to get in touch with you, and they'll be able to hit you up directly, right?
100%. The cool thing is, I actually enjoy doing this. Yeah, I enjoy seeing stats grow. I enjoy taking them from where they are and just watching that trajectory. It's what makes me kind of get out of bed in the morning, just seeing that just having an asset that kind of grows. So why not help people that needs the help, like because they use it.
Awesome. Well, anything else, Mo? Anything else you want to share here?
I think if there's any people that's listening that's kind of new to the whole niche website building type of business, it's a lot of hard work. It's definitely hard work. Sometimes you can face this kind of fake facade that building websites is easy, and it really isn't. And I think Doug's mentioned it tons of times. People they 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 kind of need to see things out over long periods and not get stuck into the short term kind of risks and losses and failures, because this site's a perfect example. I could have probably just gave up, and to be fair, I don't think anyone would have been too cross if I did, because having a site that just drops 40% within 4 weeks is ridiculous. So yeah, so it's testament to the fact that if you put the time in, that there's definitely a business here. There's something you can do here. And to be fair, if you can't spend 4, 5, 6 hours a day, maybe you can spend 2 or 3 and you still see success. Just keep following routines and make sure things are structured and have like guidelines. And it's definitely possible, because like, I had no idea how to rank organic traffic with SEO last year, and this year, I mean, yeah, I do.
On that note, and I didn't ask this before, but how did you separate all the noise and marketing from the
Yeah,
actual material that could help you? Because there's conflicting information,
yeah,
there's too much information to even do anything useful with if you go down the rabbit hole. So how did you figure
yeah.
out what was worthwhile and what wasn't?
It's tricky for me. There's two ways that you do it. First of all, you have to let everything in, because there's no way where you can just listen to 1 or 2 people on YouTube, or follow 1 or 2 blogs and say, okay, this is it. You need some context. So you kind of have to let your email inbox open to everyone, and just find out who resonates with you. I don't know if you remember, Doug, but I think January maybe of this year, I sent an email to you and I said, look, of all the people that I watch and I'm like a member of, you're one of the only people that I actually follow all the content and listen to. Just because when I first started out, well, last year September, I watched your content and it was just really simple. It was honest. It made sense. It wasn't like for me. If anyone's trying to throw something down your neck and they're trying to promote, I just turn the other way. Even though what they're promoting could be like fantastic, but I get like a click and I'm like, okay, who's next sort of thing. And for me at the time, you wasn't doing that. You just giving loads of good content. It was just really, really honest. You done loads of case studies and stuff. So that was one way that I deciphered through all of it. Just find someone that's just looking to give and give and give, just because they love doing it. You can kind of tell, because you'll see the content. It will come out like all the time, and they'll just be happy when they're speaking about it, and they won't kind of bullshit you, basically saying everything is going to be fantastic, because it's not. There's going to be hard times and there's going to be bad times. So definitely one way. Also, number two is just to go into Facebook groups and find people that have worked with other people, or people that would recommend other people, and take it from there. Because a recommendation is probably the best thing you can get from someone else, because they've gone through it. They've spent 3 months going through the material, and it worked for them. So technically, it should work for you as well.
Very good. Well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We didn't plan that ahead of time, but
No, no way. I
this is a
remember.
good
That's very
good
cool.
compliment. Well, Mo, thanks a lot. And like I said, people can find your contact info. Really appreciate your time today.
No worries. Take care, Doug.